They whisper about nightmares, but they don't realize I'm the one who taught them how to scream. This isn't just a quote, it's the truth behind every person who broke free from the script, who stopped asking for permission and started living like a storm. This video exposes what happens when you stop being the victim and become the one they can't forget. If you've ever felt misunderstood, underestimated, or silenced, this is your wake-up call. You weren't made to be liked, you were made to be unignorable. They never see it happening, not at first. The creation of a nightmare doesn't arrive with thunder, fire, or chaos. No, it arrives slowly, quietly, like dust settling over forgotten dreams. A nightmare is not born, it's engineered, not by monsters in the dark, but by hands you trusted, smiles you believed, systems you obeyed without ever asking why. The truth is, they don't break you all at once. They do it in pieces. They chip away at your identity moment by moment until one day you look in the mirror and there's someone staring back who looks like you, but doesn't feel like you. You weren't always like this. You were light once, hopeful, maybe even naive. You believed in people. You believed in effort. You believed that if you gave your best, the world would return the favor. But instead, it gave you silence. It gave you doubt. It taught you that being kind means being used, that vulnerability means weakness, and that the more you give, the easier you are to erase. And while you were busy shrinking yourself to keep them comfortable, they were molding you into something they could control. But here's the thing they never planned for, you noticed. Somewhere deep in that silence, in that ache, in the quiet torment of pretending you were fine, something inside you started to wake up. A flicker, a whisper, a refusal to go down quietly. The version of you that was supposed to stay soft, obedient, agreeable, that version cracked, and what crawled out of that silence wasn't broken. It was aware, dangerous, alive. You stopped playing the part. You stopped waiting to be saved. Because what do you do when the world keeps handing you scripts that erase your voice? You burn the scripts. You stop auditioning. You stop asking for a seat at their table, and instead, you build your own. That's what they don't understand about nightmares. They think it's some creature under the bed, some shadow in a corner. But nightmares don't hide. They walk beside you. They speak clearly. They remember everything. Because a real nightmare doesn't come to scare you. It comes to show you who built the cage you're in. And once you see it, once you know, there's no going back. So if they call you intense, unhinged, too much, let them. If they flinch when you speak truth, good. That means it's cutting deep. Because you didn't just survive the silence. You turned it into your weapon. You didn't become a nightmare. You were forced to. And now, you're wide awake. It's a strange thing, pretending to be someone you're not. At first, it feels like protection, like armor. You tell yourself it's necessary, that the world isn't ready for the real you. So you fold your edges, silence your instincts, and paint a version of yourself they can applaud. You smile when you want to scream. You nod when your soul aches to rebel. You become fluent in pleasing, addicted to approval like it's oxygen. But what they don't tell you is that every time you wear the mask, a part of you dies. And still, you wear it. You walk into rooms knowing no one truly sees you, and yet you perform. You say what they expect. You act how they prefer. Because the truth is, the world rewards pretenders. They don't want you real. They want you manageable, predictable, polished. They clap for your mask because it doesn't challenge their lies. But the second you speak from the rawness of who you are, eyes unfiltered, voice shaking from truth, they recoil because nothing terrifies the masked more than someone willing to remove theirs. You start to notice things, the way people cheer for your failure if it makes them feel superior, the way they weaponize your silence and call it maturity, the way they romanticize your pain as long as it entertains them. So you continue the performance until one day the mask doesn't fit anymore. It cracks. You put it on and it hurts. You laugh on cue and it sounds hollow. That's the breaking point, the fracture in the illusion. And in that moment, you realize you were never the problem. You were just too awake in a world that thrives on sleepwalkers. They don't love you. They love the version of you that doesn't disrupt their comfort. But comfort is where the fire dies. And you were never meant to be safe. You were meant to ignite. You stop laughing when it isn't funny. You stop shrinking in rooms built for egos. You stop translating your soul into a language that makes them feel powerful. And once you stop, the silence is deafening. They don't know what to do with you now because your realness doesn't beg. It doesn't bend. It doesn't need them. And suddenly, the room that once applauded your performance turns cold. Not because you changed, but because you stopped entertaining their illusion. They don't fear your rebellion. They fear your presence. Unmasked, unapologetic, alive. So let them keep clapping for ghosts. Let them bow to the pretend. But you walk in unmasked now. And that scares them more than any lie ever could. There comes a moment, quiet, almost forgettable on the surface, where something inside you snap, not in rage, not in revenge, but in clarity. It's the moment your soul leans forward, blood still dripping from all the times you begged to be seen, and whispers, no more. No more shrinking, no more waiting, no more asking for permission to breathe. You realize the cage was never locked. The chains, psychological. And every time you asked, is it okay if I dream a little louder, you were feeding the lie that they own your freedom, that you need their nod to move, their applause to rise, but that was the trap. They taught you to knock on doors that were never built for you. They taught you to lower your voice as if your volume was violence, but here's the truth no one dares to admit. You were never too much. They were just too small to hold your fire. So what happens when you stop asking? When you stop waiting to be invited and start taking up space unapologetically? It gets lonely, sure. The silence is loud at first. The people who loved your silence won't clap for your roar. They'll call you arrogant, call you changed, but they won't say what they're really thinking, that you terrify them now. Not because you became cruel, but because you became clear. Clear in your voice, clear in your path, clear in the fact that your life is yours, not a democracy, not a debate. And the ones who built careers on your confusion now panic because you no longer hand them the steering wheel. You've stopped asking, and that makes you uncontrollable. You don't beg to be heard, you speak. You don't wait for space, you command it. You walk into your day with your back straight and your soul loud. Not because you're fearless, but because you finally understood that fear will never leave. So you might as well walk anyway. You used to look at successful people and wonder what made them different. It wasn't talent, it wasn't money. It was this: they stopped asking. They claimed the life they wanted, like it already belonged to them. And when the world resisted, they didn't retreat. They rose. So no, you don't need permission to be bold, to chase, to create, to speak, to dream. What you need is to believe that the only one qualified to give you permission is you. And once you believe that, they can't unsee it, they can't unfeel it. You walk into rooms and they feel it before you speak. Because a person who's done asking is a person finally living. They used to say I was too loud, too sensitive, too unpredictable, and I wore those labels like chains until I realized they were scared of the one thing I refused to tame: my force. See, people are comfortable with a drizzle, they're fine with a breeze, but bring in the thunder, bring in the storm, now you're a problem. Now you're something they have to explain. And the truth is, most people don't hate you because you're dark. They hate you because your light refuses to bend. You spend so much of your life trying to be palatable, trying to be soft, trying not to disrupt the room. But storms don't ask for permission. They don't knock, they don't blend in. They arrive, they transform. And when they leave, nothing is the same. That's who you are when you finally let go of the fear of being too much. When you stop editing your roar to fit into whispers. When you step fully into the truth that you were never meant to tiptoe around comfort zones. You were meant to rip the ceiling off them. And let's be honest, they felt it long before you admitted it. The pressure building behind your smile, the scream tucked beneath your "I'm fine," the lightning in your eyes every time they tried to dim you. You weren't born a storm, you became one, built from broken promises, fake friends, silent betrayals, and applause that only came when you were bleeding. You didn't wake up strong, you were forced to be. You learned how to turn pain into purpose, silence into strategy, and wounds into warning signs. Every scar became a storm cloud. Every lie became wind in your chest. And now, when you walk into a room, the air shifts. Not because you're angry, not because you want revenge, but because you're done pretending you're not powerful. Let them say what they will. Let them call you too intense, too emotional, too chaotic. Because the truth is, they don't fear what you are. They fear what you might awaken in others. One storm makes people uncomfortable, but a chain reaction that shakes systems, that burn the scripts they've clung to their whole lives. So become it fully, ferociously. Walk with the thunder in your veins. Let your voice crack the silence. Let your presence move the ground, because when you are the storm, you don't beg to be heard. The world has no choice but to listen. And when they ask what changed, tell them the truth finally broke the dam, and now you're not walking through the storm. You are it. There's a system. You were born into it. You didn't vote for it. You didn't design it, but from the moment you opened your eyes, it was already there. Scripting your role, shaping your thoughts, branding your worth with invisible ink. The truth is, most people never see they live inside its walls, thinking it's the world. They think freedom is having 10 options for the same cage. They think success is following the blueprint handed to them by people who never even lived. The system doesn't need bars. It doesn't need chains. All it needs is belief, your belief, and it feeds on it. It starves you of truth and sells you illusions dressed as purpose. Go to school, be quiet, get the job, don't question, get married, be nice, stay in line, applaud what you're told. And if you feel something off, ignore it. That's just you being difficult. That's just your mind playing trick. But what if your mind isn't broken? What if that discomfort is the only honest thing left? Let me be brutally clear. This system was not designed for you to be free. It was designed for you to be useful, contained, predictable. And when you step outside of that, when you think for yourself, when you choose your own path, they don't congratulate you. They isolate you. They label you, not because you're wrong, but because your courage exposes their fear. That's what they hate the most. Truth with a backbone. You become a mirror, and most people don't want truth. They want comfort. They want their little narrative to stay intact, even if it's killing them slowly. But you chose to open your eyes. You chose to question the game, and that makes you a glitch, an error, a virus in their simulation. Not because you're broken, but because you're awake. And the scariest part? Once you see the system for what it is, you can't unsee it. You can't go back. You can't laugh at the jokes meant to distract you. You can't pretend the game still excites you. You stop chasing shiny things. You stop clapping for empty milestones. You start searching for realness, depth, ownership, fire. You break the pattern. And when you do, the system doesn't collapse, it shakes. Because all it takes is one person to remind the rest they were never locked in. They were trained to stay. And here you are now, no longer training. You've stepped outside the grid. You're not a piece on their board anymore. You're the player now, and you brought your own rules. So let them whisper. Let them invent stories to explain your fire, because deep down, they all know the truth. You didn't fall into darkness. You became fluent in it. You were never their nightmare by accident. You were forged by silence, shaped by betrayal, and sharpened by every moment they overlooked you. And now, you don't need their spotlight. You are the lightning. They whisper about nightmares, not knowing you're the reason they don't sleep easy anymore. So stop waiting to be understood. Stop watering yourself down to fit in. The war is already here, and whether they like it or not, you didn't just survived the storm. You became the scream that made it roar. And now, every time they whisper, it's proof you finally made them feel something.